Welcome to the Journey of an Aesthete, a comprehensive examination of all things aesthetic, the arts, the humanities, and what it means to be human.
Yes, hi. How's it going?
Oh, it's so great to talk to you now with everything going on in the world and your book, and I'm so excited. Welcome to our podcast again, a return.
Thank you.
Engagement, Journey of an Aesthete. There's so much to talk about. I scarcely know where to begin. I know that we had talked a year ago or 2 years ago, and now the major reason you're here is your book, Reading Dangerously, and this is a book lunch sort of show because I'm doing this series about particular books, and I think your book is one of the most exciting. I love your book, and I think it's, well, we could talk more about it in detail, but it couldn't have been written.
That's great. It's so wonderful to hear you say so.
Well, I'm sure you probably, if I had to guess, I don't think you suspected. You know, you're not the type of critic or writer to think first of relevance or topicality. But I'm sure even you must have been surprised at how your book landed at the perfect time.
Yeah, I wish times were different and my book was irrelevant. But these are amazing times. I mean, we either transition to a more democratic society or go the other way.
Yeah.
Both of them are possible.
Well, we're seeing both simultaneously, right? We're seeing, I mean, if we leave aside art and aesthetics and look at the real world, in quotes, we're seeing all sorts of things happening at once, some positive and negative. You know, we're seeing, as you know, we're seeing authoritarianism around the world, inside the United States, and a lot of it centers around censorship, right? A lot of it, when you say a lot of it is basically treating a book, I don't know, treating the book not as an object of imagination or reflection, but as kind of a how-to manual or something very a roadmap. But again, there's so much to talk about. I want to talk about this book in particular. Particularly, it opens up with Rushdie and Bradbury, and you could talk about that chapter. And I should say that the book is epistolary, and you've done this before, right? You like this form of.
You mean the letter form?
Yeah.
I liked it. I hadn't tried it before. I had played with it a lot. Mm-hmm. And for this book, I had a lot of difficulty trying to choose the kind of letters that I wanted to write, so that they would be intimate, but at the same time would not just be about my personal life.
I'm very impressed with what you do with that, and I think in earlier books you have brought in personal family, and you've talked to your father before in earlier books, and I always love it. This entire book is your letters. You know, you're writing. You know, I know you haven't read the Satanic Verses. I wish you could have read it. What you would think, and it's just so beautiful. There's one of the things I like about the book is how you balance these very intimate personal things with very universal, global, getting outside of just one person, just one family. It's very skilled in how you sort of do that.
Thank you. I always feel that both in fiction and nonfiction, the individual, we have to discover that inner core, which is universal within anything that is particular. And, literature and arts are places where the limitations that life places on us, like nationality, race, gender, political ideologies, religion, ethnicity. All of these are transcended in literature and art, in the world of imagination and ideas. So I tried to find that universal core at the heart of the more intimate personal experience.
Yes, in the particular. So you might say. So I wonder, I'm going to ask you a question or a kind of an option of choices here. I really would love to hear one of these letters or one of these, and maybe because Rushdie is on our minds, on my mind, do we need to talk a little bit about what's happening with him first, or read from your first part of the book where you discuss Salman Rushdie, if you want to, or if you want to talk about something else? Or
No, I began the book with Rushdie and Plato and Bradbury because I felt that this conflict between an absolutist mindset and that of the poet is not new. It has existed since at least 2,000 years ago, when Plato wrote about his republic, and that animosity between the philosopher king and the poet was based mainly on the fact that Plato felt that the philosopher king would spread the noble lie.
Right.
So the whole republic was based on a lie that would keep the people, make the people be controlled by the state, and within this sort of a controlled society, the poet has no place. Of course, in Plato's Republic, they exile him because the poet is unpredictable. He brings to us ambiguities. He makes us question not just the world, but ourselves. And he is in search of truth. So there is an inherent, what happened between Ayatollah Khomeini and Salman Rushdie, you could see that this inherent danger an absolutist mindset would see in a playful, mischievous mindset like Rushdie's, and then I thought that it is a good start for the kind of book I wanted to write, which was the subversive and constructive role that imagination and ideas played in our lives.
It's interesting. I mean, I'm not as intimate with Rushdie as you are. I did read Midnight's Children, however, way back in the 90s. Mainly because a teacher I had at Conservatory of Music said you got to read Midnight's Children. Of course, that was before the Satanic Verses came in and everything.
Yeah.
But the fatwa was issued, in 89? That was the year I graduated from, I got my bachelor's in music. It's interesting to think about then and now, and they did attack him just this month in New York, and I just I'm wondering your reflections on you mentioned Plato. It's a very complicated issue because, of course, there are defenders of Plato, right, that try to I don't know, say, well, we're misreading Plato. He's not a tyrant. He's worried just about bad poetry or this kind of thing, to try to cover, try to cover over. But anyhow, it's complicated, the philosophy and
It is complicated, and I try to bring a little bit of that complication into the discussion of him, because in the same book, in the Republic, he also talks about how we ordinary mortals are afraid of enlightenment, afraid of the truth, and we don't want to hear it. So while on one hand he's talking about the noble lie, on the other he's talking about the dangers of blindness, of ignorance, and the seductions of ignorance. And we see it in our own society today. The QAnon and Trump's lies, how, I mean, it's surprising that in a democracy, so many people believe the lies.
Yeah. What's noteworthy about these news items, like this QAnon, is how similar they are to some of the inventions of certain novelists and writers.
Yeah.
As you know, many writers, particularly in the 80s and early 90s, in fiction, were inventing cults and inventing strange. I mean, Don DeLillo does this in his work. Rushdie does it. It's interesting. It's like it's very uncanny that it's now a real thing in the world.
That is the whole miracle of great writing. The fact that they reconstruct the past for us and reveal the present and predict the future. I mean, so many works of art that were written 2,000 years ago are still relevant today. And one reason I brought Ray Bradbury was because he showed how dangerous fiction is, how dangerous thinking is. And he also predicted the kind of world we live in right now, a world that is so superficial.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's certainly some of that. There's that worry in The Illustrated Man, not just Fahrenheit. I mean, it's actually in more than one text by him. Would you say that was a theme throughout his a lot of his different?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Oh no, my question was about Ray Bradbury's entire oeuvre. That seems to be a common theme, and like The Illustrated Man comes to mind for some reason, as much as Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah,
he was worried about that very much.
Yeah, he was worried about that, and he, I mean, in Fahrenheit 451, where you have these screens, like TV screens on the walls of people, and people find these TV characters as their real family.
That's right.
And they participate in the lie. And we can see it now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, each of the writers I wrote about in this book, in one way or another, have predicted what is happening right now. All of them have lived in societies that have been totalitarian. I mean, Atwood has not been a citizen of a totalitarian state, but she was in East Germany for a while, lived in East Germany.
Interesting.
And so all of them have it.
That's really, I did not know that about her living. That's it. I'm sure that informs her writing. I'm sure that has an effect on live in East Germany.
Yeah, I mean, what surprised me and my Persian friends who had lived under the Islamic Republic was how accurately she portrays the totalitarian mindset, and how she creates the atmosphere of a totalitarian system. And of course, I mentioned in the book that she definitely had the Islamic Republic also in mind, although she doesn't mention it. But at the end of the book, she has an appendix, to the fictional one, where this professor is giving a paper on the two totalitarian republics, Gilead, which is the imaginary one in Atwood's book, and the Islamic Republic. So she's completely aware of what the texture of life in a society, totalitarian society is.
I was wondering, you've done an enormous amount of teaching, and I guess in teaching you're teaching books, right? Novels and short stories probably, and even other things, I don't know. Maybe other kinds of texts, I wouldn't know, but I'm wondering, do you think the problem is rooted in a misunderstanding of what a book is? I sort of an odd way to put it, or wonky way to put it, but I don't know quite how to. Is it sort of kind of an I don't know, a misperception of the book itself, or is it I don't know.
Yeah, I think that censorship itself is based on this kind of a mindset that does not want to see reality, but wants to impose his or her fiction on reality, and therefore they mistake fiction for reality. I remember we were talking in my class with my students that if we read a book from the eye of censorship, for example, they say Madame Bovary is bad because it promotes adultery. We read Madame Bovary, we become adulterers, where, first of all, Madame Bovary does not have a very happy ending. So adultery is not rewarded, but that is not the point. Right. The point is that the book is not about adultery, although there is adultery in it, but it is about imposing your dreams upon your reality so that you live in a dream world, detached from that reality. Right. That is what Madame Bovary is talking about. If we read a book and then we went and did what the characters in the book would do, in Old Man and the Sea, you would go fishing. With Moby Dick, you learn how to fish how to catch a whale. Right.
Moby Dick. Hold that thought. That reminds me of Ray Bradbury, because he wrote the script for John Huston's picture. I'm wondering what you feel about that film and what they did with that. Your impressions of Gregory Peck.
I wish I had seen it recently. I haven't. Was that the movie with Julie Christie in it?
No, it's Moby Dick. Ray Bradbury.
Oh, Moby Dick. Moby Dick. Yes. That film with Gregory Peck.
Yeah, Gregory Peck, yep.
Yeah.
That's Ray Bradbury.
I saw it when I was so young. I don't remember it enough to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. That's just a fair question because we were talking about Bradbury. He must have been quite something to be able to do that. It's not an easy task to take a novel like that and write a script.
No, he is really amazing.
But I'm just wondering. Yeah, it's this thing about book or censorship. So I'm just wondering about if you want to talk about some of the other writers in your book, Reading Dangerously. Maybe not just Atwood, but Grossman and Ackerman. There's very educational, introducing a lot of things.
Yeah, that chapter, it became really interesting to me. First of all, Grossman is so preoccupied with the idea of not dehumanizing your enemy. And that is at the core of so many of his writings. I mean, we know that politically he's very progressive, and he supports Palestinian struggle against the occupation of the lands and things like that. But in his books, he's not being political. He is being existential. I mean, there are things that we resist because they are existentially wrong. And he focuses on the lives of individuals rather than on political concepts. And I thought it was interesting to put him side by side with someone who had been active in the Palestinian resistance, Elias Khoury. Now, he also, like Grossman, does not want to dehumanize the enemy. And he talks about the Holocaust and says that we are all guilty of not supporting the Jewish people when we had to. They both see something universal in that is reflected in literature and arts. And then, of course, Ackerman is in a different way than Grossman and Khoury is involved in the war. And I found it fascinating, the passage I bring in my book from Ackerman's book, where he talks, after the war in Iraq, where he served, there's a meeting between him and a former Al-Qaeda operative. And they find so much in common. They end up talking about their children, and it is amazing. These are the people who have experienced it, who have been in the heat of the war, and yet they're so humane that. And they're not forgiving. I mean, it doesn't mean that because your enemy is human, all is forgotten. I bring examples from the Nuremberg Trials. Now, those trials were not ideal, but they showed the difference between a democratic society and a totalitarian one. Hitler would have had his concentration camps and killing people, and everybody knew it, but would the Allies, what they did was not just put those people against the wall and shoot them. They gave them the chance to defend themselves, even though they had committed the worst, most heinous crimes. And you do that because you want to remain humane yourself.
That's right. That's really important. I mean, losing people, there's a lot of anxiety about losing the humanity.
Yeah.
That's a theme. I mean, that's often, I actually think it's a theme in some current literature, but it's often talked about in mid-20th century literature, of course, right? Or at least 60s and 70s. There's a kind of Raymond Carver, maybe a little bit, kind of the anxiety about a certain kind of suburban life being restricting and so forth, or a kind of a working class life being restricting, or but I think it's still a theme. I mean, I just finished. What are you reading now? I just finished an interesting book by Teddy Wang about people. Do you know Teddy Wang?
No.
Yeah, it's a book about liberals in Brooklyn dealing with Trumpism, and it's almost a comedy of manners. It's very funny.
Wow.
Yeah, it just came out. It's called The Great Man Theory. So I finished that.
The Great what theory?
The Great Man Theory. Was the title.
Man Theory.
Yeah, Wing. Yeah, he's in Brooklyn. I'm also reading Emily Costello's book. I'm sure.
Which one?
It's a book about how to read now.
Oh.
Which I think is it's a very tendentious book and very political book. It's kind of a little bit like a response to How to Read and Why by Bloom from 20 years ago. So that's interesting. So that's kind of what things I'm reading now, but I'm wondering what you're...
I just finished this book by this Polish Nobel laureate, Olga, I can't pronounce her last name.
Okay.
Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead.
Whoa.
It is a sort of a macabre comedy.
Uh-huh.
Which baffles you, which you can't take. There's sort of a mystery side to it. People are being found dead around this little hamlet where the narrator is talking about. So I just finished that one, and I'm having, I have Elliot Ackerman's The Fifth Act.
Oh, wow.
America's End in Afghanistan. He's a very beautiful writer. Then a translation of, there's this book, which is a translation of 1,000 years of Persian-speaking women poets, female poets. And when you read that book, it is amazing to see that 1,000 years ago, how women, it seems as if they were born yesterday. They are so courageous. They are so concrete in expressing their feelings and their emotions. And anyone who talks about women from Middle Eastern countries, or of course Iran is Persian, but nonetheless from that part of the world. And, unfortunately nowadays when you talk about it, only clerics with turbans come to mind. But that is not the whole picture.
No.
There are, especially when we come to women, they are amazing, and the way they have been fighting, and they are still fighting for their rights. So I'm reading that as well, and I'm reading mystery.
Yeah, you like mysteries. I know that you've written.
I like mystery.
I know that you like Dorothy Sayers, I think, if I remember.
Yeah, I like Dorothy Sayers, but I like so many of them. But I have always been curious about the ethics and morality in mystery, and how the main character is always subversive and anti-establishment in a way.
Well, what mystery have you been reading then? You said you were going to...
Well, recently I have been reading the ones that I had not read before. So I finished all the books by Louis Denny, and I am now going through Anne Perry. So those are the books that I have been reading. And I'm interested in the way they bring in society and social and political problems, the way they weave it within the plot.
That's interesting. Everybody needs an anchor in life. You, me, just everybody. Anchor made this whole show possible. I'm immensely grateful to them. You too can use Anchor. to make your own shows and create your own vision. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I'm wondering your thoughts on the connection between different art forms, because I don't know, for some reason, I rewatched, because we lost Kiarostami some years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I rewatched Taste of Cherry and 10 and The Wind Will Carry Us. These are remarkable films. But I'm just wondering what you feel about the relationship between what he does and things in literature. What comes to mind? Because that's not something that I would really know as much.
What he does in relation to literature, or
the written word and image, or the any thoughts you have about that?
Well, I participated in the movie he made, Close Up.
You're in that?
I know. I decided that I want to write a book about it.
Oh my God!
And so every morning, Kiarostami would come and pick me up.
Oh wow!
And we'll go to the different scenes and places, and it was interesting how people, when they became aware that I was there for writing a book, how they changed. Their attitude towards me changed. Mm-hmm. They all became a little bit more artificial and guarded. But it was quite an amazing experience. I liked the way Kiarostami played with reality. Mm-hmm. And how he has this dry sense of humor that I very much appreciated. He loved to play jokes on you all the time.
Well, what are some examples of jokes that he did play, or anything that comes to mind, stories about him with that experience? Because that's quite...
Well, he actually, that film was also memorable because of one other director's participation in it, which was Makhmalbaf. The director, he was. And well, when Kiarostami told me that we'll be meeting Makhmalbaf, I was really on my guard. I really disliked him. He was so he was the darling of the regime.
Interesting.
And he had said that the damned Fellini and I don't remember the other, Antonioni maybe, they should be killed, And so but things were changing, and it was very interesting. The first time I saw him, he was holding a book by Iran's most popular feminist poet who had died in an accident, and the regime, of course, she was among the first to be banned in Iran, and he came with a copy of her book and talked about Rumi.
Oh, wow.
And talked about how, like for Rumi was explaining about how he drops a mirror and the mirror breaks, and then you see the world through all these different fragments of the mirror. So the world is various and exactly opposite everything he had been. And that was the beginning of Makhmalbaf's transformation.
Wow.
From the darling of the regime to the enemy of the regime.
So what do you make of that? It's interesting to hear about. It's always interesting to me because I'm kind of an outsider. So when you hear about someone like Mary Evans or George Eliot changing her philosophical point of view and hanging out with Spencer and maybe developing some bad ideas, perhaps, or vice versa. It's interesting to think about artists having their own points of view, right, and changing. And that's something that's
yeah, it is very interesting. With Mac Malbaf, I always say he had this illusion that he will change the camera, that he will change, but the camera changed him.
Yes.
His contact with art made him go back and look at the damned Fellini and Antonioni and Rossellini, and be seduced by them.
Yeah.
And he then also had attacked Kiarostami and Beyzai and all the old men of the Iranian cinema. And then he made a film taking very much from Kiarostami's cue, where he celebrates the Iranian cinema from the beginning of its conception, and at the beginning of the 20th century. And he goes through all these films and directors that he had before been very nasty towards, and so it is interesting how art can change you. I have seen it with my students. I have seen it with my Orthodox Muslim students who begin hating the novels, and when they read them, they change, or when they see the film, they change.
Interesting. What comes to mind is an obvious example. The first book, I don't know, anything that pops into your mind of that. Of course, excepting Lolita, because you wrote about that, but other what comes to mind? Henry James or something?
You mean someone? You mean someone liking it?
Yes, discovering something new and
discovering. Well, the most horrendous, actually, experience I had with Henry James was with this. This is a little too long. Should I not say this and say something shorter?
It's up to you. You're the guest. The guest is the boss on my show. If you want to, I'm not going to tell you what to. If you think it's too technical or too.
No, it's not technical. Well, I'll tell you. You can cut it. Yeah. I had the first year I went back to Iran. That first year I taught at a girls' university. And one of my students was an Orthodox Muslim girl who was very slight and very curious. And she came from a very poor family. Her father had died, and her mother was a cleaning lady. And she belonged to a Muslim organization, but it was an organization that was the opponent of the regime. Anyway, to make this long story short, when we started with Henry James, she became very much enamored of him. And the reason she loved Henry James was because of his independent-minded women, Daisy Miller and Catherine Sloper in Washington Square. She was very, and after class she would stay and talk to me.
Oh wow!
About them. And once she laughed and said, "I think I'm in love," and she meant that she was in love with Henry James. Anyway. I left that university and I lost touch with her. And then some years later, another student of mine who belonged to the leftist students at the university, and she had been jailed and arrested and jailed, and she came to see me at the new university I was teaching, and she was talking about her jail experiences, and she said that she was in the same cell with Razieh, that girl who loved Henry James. And she said we had a lot of fun because I would talk about The Great Gatsby, and she would talk about Henry James, and we would tell about our memories of the class. And then she paused and said, Razieh was executed. And I promised myself that wherever, I talk about it in my book as well, but I promised myself that wherever and whenever it is appropriate, I want to bring her name. That is the only way I can pay tribute to her, and is by keeping her memory alive. And the thing that made me feel that Razieh's life and death are both carriers of hope is that, I ask myself, Henry James couldn't save Razieh from execution. What is it in works of art and literature that when people are at death's door, they turn to them? I mean, you read so many memoirs from concentration camps and gulags where people turn to poetry. They talk about Dante, and it is because when you have lost all faith in humanity, you instinctively turn back towards the best achievements of humanity, and those things that remind you of life rather than death, and that is literature and art, and that is the miraculous role that literature and arts play in our lives, and sometimes we are so ignorant that we neglect them.
That's so beautifully put, and I'm certainly going to keep that into the show. No editing of that. That's pretty important, I think.
Thank you.
I think, I want to ask you a question. An offhand remark you made at a lecture where you were kind of down on STEM. You said you don't believe in STEM teaching. I thought that was kind of funny, but I thought you had more to say on that, and maybe that our schools are too STEM based a little bit, and not.
Well, I was just against the whole idea behind these things. There's a utilitarian tendency in American education, and that does not look at the process, but looks at the rewards at the end of the process.
Yeah.
And that is what, one of the things that makes the difference between us and totalitarian societies is liberal arts and humanities. The first thing that the Islamic regime attacked was teaching humanities at the universities. Khomeini said that universities were more dangerous than bombs. Now, everybody could take engineering and science. Nobody would tell them not to, but it was humanities and liberal arts that they were worried about. Oh, yeah. And that is one thing that a democratic society has to offer, especially in the United States, all these liberal art colleges and all the focus on not the rewards, not how much money I will make if I take a course, but how much knowledge. I mean, without knowledge, how can you live in a democratic society? Just the simple act, or the not so simple act of voting comes with the knowledge of your own country history and some history of the world, the values. I mean, you can see right now how ignorance is eroding our electoral colleges. So I just, it wasn't just STEM, it was just the whole system.
Right.
That is problematic. We don't go to university to make money. We do need to make money in order to live, but every democracy has to provide its citizens with free, quality education and health. That is fundamental to preservation of democracy. And I'm so scared because of what is happening in our colleges and schools.
Yes, it definitely connects to your new book. Your book it's Azar Nafisi, Read Dangerously, The Subversive Power of Literature in Troubled Times. Is there anything you want to say about the reception of the book and the way the book, I mean, I'm just one person, but I know some things come to your mind of how people were receiving it and discussing it.
Yeah, one of the great feelings I had with this book, to tell you the truth, is the conversations around it. It is a tribute to the readers, rather than because it is really strange. But when you talk with someone who has gotten it, you sometimes find these nooks and corners in your book that you had not paid attention to or you had missed. I mean, you get to know your book again. And I've had some really enthusiastic reception where people formulate their ideas on reading the book in such a new way, that I like. But there was one reader who felt that I was being very pompous. So,
pompous, huh?
Yeah.
That's a curious adjective. I don't quite know what that means, but what? I mean, that's.
I don't know, but that was the criticism that comes to my mind. But mainly, it has been receptive.
Well, hold on. Could it be that they don't understand the form of it? I mean, because you're writing, you're writing to your father, late father, and there's a certain kind of affection and a poetry in that. Maybe they misunderstood that. Maybe they didn't. Yeah,
I don't know, but there were so many wonderful reactions that I felt, quote unquote, this cliche. I felt blessed.
Yes, certainly. Well, we're blessed to have you on this book lunch, because I got to say, this is I want everybody to go out and get this book and read it.
It is such a joy talking to you.
It's a joy having you here, and I wish you that this book continues to grow, and that maybe this book will turn a corner for the better in our political and civic life. If that's, and so you can be a little less worried than we are now.
Yeah. I keep having my fingers crossed, literally.
Yes. Azar Nafisi, is there anything else you want to say before we conclude? Anything that's on your mind?
Well, at the end of my book, I bring a slogan, although I hate slogans, and I say that readers of the world unite. So I think this is the time not just for writers, but for readers to understand their power and to understand the urgency of celebrating and preserving ideas and imagination, preserving books and fighting against censorship.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Azar Nafisi, for your generosity and for this book. You're one of my favorite people on the show, and I wish you a good fall and coming season.
Thank you very much, Mitch. And you will send us the link, right?
Of course. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I don't like goodbyes, so I'll see you soon, folks. Thank you.